All right, today we're diving into something pretty wild. We're unpacking a provocative argument from a longtime UFO researcher. And his idea is that the secrecy around this topic isn't just about hiding things. Nope. The argument is that it's actually illegal, a massive crime going on for decades. So, yeah, let's get right into it. And this really is the question that kicks everything off. I mean, think about it for a second. What if every time you see that top secret stamp on a document, it's a lie, not just hiding a secret, but an unconstitutional fraud? It's a bold, bold claim for sure. So let's break down how this argument even gets off the ground. Okay, so here's how we're going to tackle this. We're going to follow the speaker's logic, step by step. First, we'll hit the core legal argument. He calls it the illegality thesis. Then, we'll look at the evidence he says backs it all up. After that, things get really interesting. We'll explore how one event can be spun into two totally different stories. That leads us to what he calls the ultimate psyop, and we'll wrap up with what he proposes as the only way forward. All right, first section, the illegality thesis. And what's so fascinating here, is that this whole thing doesn't kick off with little green men or crashed ships. Nope. According to the speaker, it all starts with something much more grounded, the U.S. Constitution. Okay, so here's the absolute core of it. The speaker claims that he spent years briefing the highest levels of government. I mean, we're talking CIA directors, top intelligence officials, the whole shebang. And what he supposedly realized is that the actual legal chain of command, it was being completely cut out of the loop. So these secret projects, they're not just secret. He's saying they are flat out illegal, operating in the shadows with zero constitutional oversight. So because of that conclusion, his group came up with this really provocative policy. They call it unless otherwise directed. Basically, their logic is, hey, if the whole secrecy system is illegal, then these documents aren't legally classified, so they treat them as open source. They're basically throwing down the gauntlet and saying it's up to the actual legal government to show up and tell us to stop. I mean, talk about a direct challenge. And this quote, man, it just perfectly captures the bottom line. He's not just saying, oh, some of these files are a little too secret. No way. He is making the claim that every single top secret classification on this topic is a complete fraud, that it has zero legal weight, period. Okay, so that's the legal theory, right? It's a huge one. But a theory like that, well, it's got to have something to back it up. You can't just make a claim that big without some evidence. So where does it come from? The speaker points to this huge archive of documents, stuff he says they've collected for decades, that he believes proves these incredible claims. And he zeroes in on a few key pieces of paper that pop up throughout the Cold War. We're going to look at a couple of these. We'll start way back in 1950 with a memo out of Canada, then we'll jump to 62 for a really wild story about an alleged wiretap, and finish up in 76 with this intense military encounter over Iran. Each one is supposed to be another piece of this giant puzzle. So, let's start with this first one, the Wilbur Smith memo. Now, the story goes that this is an official top-secret document from the Canadian government that kind of got out by mistake. And why does it matter so much? Well, it's because of what's in it. I mean, listen to this. This memo, from all the way back in 1950, apparently states, quote, flying saucers exist, period. And that the whole topic is classified higher than the H-bomb. So from the very, very beginning, we're talking about an insane level of secrecy. Okay, then you have this document, and wow, it's an alleged CIA transcript of a wiretap. The date, just 2 days before Marilyn Monroe died. And the speaker claims it proves she was about to go public, to hold a press conference and tell the world what JFK had supposedly told her about seeing objects from outer space at a secret airbase. I mean, that is a bomb shot claim. All right, let's jump forward to 1976. Here, the speaker brings up this official military report about an Iranian F-16 pilot. He's chasing a UFO, he goes to fire, and his weapon systems just go dead. Nothing. The other craft doesn't shoot back, doesn't attack, it just stops the fight before it can start. And for the speaker, this is Exhibit A for non-hostile intent. And this is where we really get to the core of his argument. He says that these events, like that encounter in Iran, they get deliberately twisted. They're used to create two totally different, competing stories. So on one hand, you've got the story the speaker is telling, that these are peaceful beings trying to stop us from blowing ourselves up. A warning, basically. But then, on the other hand, you have what he calls the PSYOP narrative, that these are hostile invaders, a scary threat that we need to fight.
Two completely different takes on the exact same event. And he says this is straight out of the PSYOP 101 playbook. You take a real thing that happened, say a UFO shows up and shuts down a nuclear missile silo. The way he sees it, that's a warning. But you spin it, and suddenly it's not a warning anymore. Now it's a hostile attack on our national security. See? Same set of facts, but the story is flipped on its head.
So, where does all this lead? What's the point of all this spin? Well, this is where we get to the most shocking part of the speaker's whole thesis. He calls it the ultimate PSYOP, and he claims it's a plan that's been cooking for more than 70 years. So really, what is the end game here? If you're running a disinformation campaign for that long, spanning generations, what is the final goal? Well, according to the speaker, it's a 4-step plan, and it's pretty dark. Step 1, way back in the 50s, was to figure out how to use this topic for psychological warfare. Step 2 was to spend decades building up this idea of an alien threat, using movies, news, whatever. Step 3 involved faking events, hoaxed abductions, weird stuff, to really cement that fear in the public mind. And the last step, the endgame, a completely staged fake alien attack, a false flag event to scare the world into uniting against an enemy that isn't even real. So you're probably thinking, how on earth could anyone pull that off? Well, the speaker says they have a whole box of tricks. We're talking about man-made flying craft that look and act just like the real thing. Hoaxed abductions carried out not by real ETs, but by these creepy bio-robotic things he calls programmed life forms. And you wrap it all up with a media machine that's pushing that threat narrative 24/7. Okay, so if that's the problem, this incredibly complex, decades-long deception, what's the solution? That brings us to our final section, the path to disclosure. And his answer is, well, it's pretty radical, but it's also simple. He says we shouldn't be sitting around waiting for the government to decide to tell us the truth. His whole point is that because the secrecy itself is illegal, the information doesn't belong to them. It's already public. It's open source, just sitting there for anyone who wants to look. So his call to action is really for everybody, for the whistleblowers who are still on the inside, and for all of us on the outside. The mission is to challenge the official narrative, to bring out all the evidence, all the testimony that shows a completely different story than the one we've been told for so long. So when you put it all together, what he's describing is an alleged conspiracy of secrecy and psychological manipulation that's been going on for more than 80 years. That's a long time to keep the world in the dark. And that's where we're left. It's a really complex and, let's be honest, challenging narrative. It's all built on documents and claims that are, of course, highly controversial. But it does leave you with a pretty fundamental question, doesn't it? In a world filled with secrets and powerful storytellers, who actually gets to decide what's true?